Hi, so today we will be presenting our narrative story that we've been working on for the past few weeks. We all worked hard to collectively create a fun story implementing our own unique characteristics and backgrounds within the characters. In this presentation, Holden will cover the themes that we found, Cal will discuss how we picked themes, then Taylor will touch on how we applied these selected themes. Chloe will talk about the literary elements we used, and finally, Edgar will provide a concise summary of the events within our story.
After reviewing our connotated selfies, Group 7 decided to make a couple changes to the research question to fit our group a little bit better. So, a common theme among our selfies was how much of an influence our upbringings and our parents and friendships had when we were younger, and so we wanted to add that into our question, along with the idea that we are more complex than just high achieving learners. So we wanted to also add that in to do a little bit more research and find out ways that um, our backgrounds and our influences have worked to form our personal identities more than just the fact that we are high achieving learners. So, in conclusion, our revised research question was: how have selfie students been influenced by their upbringings, environment, social relationships, and cultural notions as a means of forming their complex personal identities as high achieving learners?
So the themes we found throughout the interviews and conversations we had in our class include our upbringing, which was brought up a lot, and that just means our parents were majorly involved in pushing us to become high-achieving learners. But that doesn't mean they were overly strict or anything. Most of us, some of us had strict parents, some of us were just trying to get us to try our best, but they all pushed us to become high-achieving learners. Second was social relationships outside of family, and some of us did bring up social relationships, and usually it was if we had a good friend for a long time, we would look up to them and follow them into becoming a high achieving learner. And some of us moved into different places and had to have a higher work ethic to make new friends. The environments is kind of like a combination of the two, and that kind of influenced our like political views and how we viewed our like selves as like learners and stuff. And some of us had the same views as our parents and friends. Some of us had opposites. It was different. But overall, we all are very humble in calling ourselves high achieving learners. None of us are really bragging about it, but we all do know that we worked really hard to become high achieving learners and get where we are and getting where we are today.
We picked themes based off of the common topics we saw in each interview transcript. So, for example, one very common thing that occurred in all of the interviews was parents. And we divided that topic up into whether parents were more lenient or parents were more strict. And we did that for all of the topics that were shared and mentioned in the transcripts. And based off of each topic that we came up with, we divided into groups of people who shared the same common aspect within each topic. So, like if everybody had a more lenient parent, they would go into one group, while the people who had stricter parents went into another group. And then, based off of those groups, we created characters that kind of reflected the shared topics.
So moving on to how we applied our themes, obviously we went through that kind of big process to choose them. We found our themes. Now how did we apply them? So the biggest way we applied our themes was in our characters. Obviously they reflected ourselves and the themes we found, such as our parents and upbringings. Were our characters' parents divorced? Were they heavily involved with their life, in their academics, that sort of things? Their social relationships like teams, friends, clubs, cultural and notions that kind of tie in with the environment that they were raised in, as well as how they feel about being a high achieving learner. Are they more lax about it, or do they take a lot more pride and put a lot more emphasis on that title? Then we kind of used interactions to apply our themes, so we mainly used that through our Uno game. Our characters were able to reveal a lot about themselves and therefore about the themes that we found and how, those kind of reflect in our characters and in the story. Then we have the goals and the growth. You can see that in our epilogue. Our character our characters, Sophia, she made a lot more friends. Daniel, he's still partier, but he focuses more on school. And Athena, she starts to be more open and kind of more involved and have those deeper relationships. Those are all kind of reflect those themes that we selected. And then last but not least were the literary elements we used to reflect these themes. But Chloe's going to talk about that more in the next slide.
So for our literary elements in our narrative, we first decided to separate our narrative into days. So we went day 1, day 2, so on, and then we reached a final conclusion where we kind of summarized what happens to each character. We also decided to use third person to describe the overall plot of the story because we felt like using first person was maybe going to be too difficult to describe all of the emotions and thoughts that were going on, especially when thinking about the fact that there are 7 people in the group. So we decided to go that way, but in order to still reflect those emotions and thoughts, we decided to make it dialogue heavy. So that way the reader can look into what the characters are saying in order to understand their emotions and what's going on in the story. We also used a lot of descriptive language to give a look into the mood and the imagery of the scene or the plot in order to enrich the narrative.
This story stars 3 characters, which are an amalgamation of various members of our group. The 3 characters include Athena, Sophia, and Daniel. At the beginning of the story, each of the characters finds out that they have COVID-19 and that they have to be quarantined at Purdue Village for the next 10 days. For the first 5 days, the characters regularly meet and play various games of Uno. Over these games of Uno, they find out about each of the characters' backgrounds, values that they hold, their hopes and dreams, and their current views of Purdue University, along with several other things. In the end, they find out that they did not in fact have COVID and that it was just a data mix-up. They are allowed to return to campus and leave quarantine. The story ends about a month later with an epilogue where the characters meet again for a game of Uno and discuss how their lives have changed in the past month since quarantine and discussing these important things in their lives. We find out that each of the characters have grown in ways that they could not have before and that they understand themselves at a deeper level now. This is a synopsis of our story.
Looking back on this project, we definitely learned a lot as a result of our work. By listening to each other talk about our own backgrounds, we learned things about one another that we did not know before. Working together to create this story, we developed a better understanding of how to productively work together as a team and also how to effectively discuss disagreements in regards to how things should get done. As was part of the assignment, we improved our ability to not only create a story, but also our ability to incorporate aspects of our own self into the story. Thank you for listening to our presentation.